This lecture is to cover Chapter 14, Marketing Channels and Supply Chain Management. There are 8 objectives for this particular chapter. 1. Describe the types of marketing channels and the roles they play in marketing strategy. 2. Outline the major channel strategy decisions. 3. Describe the concepts of channel management, conflict, and cooperation. 4. Identify and describe the different vertical marketing systems. 5. Explain the roles of logistics and supply chain management in an overall distribution strategy. 6. Identify the major components of a physical distribution system. 7. Compare the major modes of transportation. And 8. Discuss the role of transportation intermediaries, combined transportation modes, and warehousing in improving physical distribution. Now, in order to get grounded in the basics of this chapter, it is important to first cover a few key concepts. The first one I want to talk about is distribution, which is the movement of goods and services from producers to customers. Remember, we talked at the beginning part of the semester where there are 4 P's to marketing. We had price, we had product, we had promotion. Now we're talking about place or distribution. And the distribution strategy has 2 key parts. One is the marketing channel, which is the overall system that marketing institutions use that will help with the flow, the physical flow of goods and services throughout the system. And also they have a role in terms of ownership, in terms of making that process easier for products to flow from the producer to, in the case of the consumer, or in case of business, to the business user. Now, the other part of the overall distribution strategy, the idea of logistics and supply chain management. And logistics are the overall coordination of the flow of information, goods, and services among members of the distribution channel. And supply chain management, that's the part of getting the necessary supplies to turn the raw materials into products that can be made available for the consumer to purchase. A part of logistics is the physical distribution, which includes things including from transporting a product to inventory control to warehousing and everything in between. Now, the role of marketing channels in the marketing strategy is great. And there are 4 basic functions of marketing channels. The first one is the facilitating the exchange process by reducing the number of marketplace contacts necessary to make a sale. Now, think about it this way. How tough it would be if, in order to get a box of Tide or some deodorant or toothpaste or something you would buy from a Walmart, if instead of going right down the road to a Kroger or to a Walmart, if you actually had to go to a P&G factory to get that, that wouldn't be very efficient for you as the consumer or for the company. So marketing channels help increase efficiency for the overall process of getting products to the consumer. 2, adjusting for discrepancies in the market's assortment of goods and services via sorting. So in essence, what they're doing here is they are matching the right supply with the right number of things that a buyer wants. So even though a manufacturer is trying to maximize the amount that it's producing, it might not fit exactly with what the buyer is trying to do. So maybe I, as a manufacturer, will produce a box of Reese cups that might have 100 Reese cups in it, but maybe I, as the buyer, only want 50. And so the marketing channel will help match up the right supply of the right number with that particular buyer. 3, the standardization exchange transactions by setting expectations for products. And this is in terms of things like delivery schedules and payment terms. And lastly, facilitating searches by both buyers and sellers. So what it does in essence is it brings buyers and sellers together in a very efficient process. Now, there are different types of marketing channels and words associated, terminology associated with marketing channels. So one of the things they talk about many times when they're talking about marketing channels is this idea of marketing intermediary. So an organization that operates between producers and consumers or business users. In other words, it's like a middleman, someone that's in between. An example of this would be a wholesale. Now, a wholesale is a little different in terms of that it will actually take title to the goods. So I'm actually going to take ownership of the goods, and I'll handle those and then distribute those out to a variety of sources. It could be retailers, it could be the end consumer, or it could be other distributors. So again, a wholesale actually takes ownership of the product. Now here's a great example in figure 14.1 which explains how the marketing channels work. And what I want to do for this particular explanation is really focus on the top diagram. So you have different ways you can get product to a consumer. It can go directly from a producer, in that case a little factory you see there, directly to the consumer. A great example of that might be someone like Ch14, where if you are investing your funds, you actually deal directly with Charles Schwab online. Great example of that. Sometimes it might go from the manufacturer to the retailer. So if I'm P&G, I make some Tide, I then ship it to Walmart, where you can then go and buy that particular product. Sometimes you might put in between there, it could be a wholesaler, or in this case, it could also be an agent or a broker. So I sell product to a wholesaler. They then, as I mentioned, take ownership of that. They then kind of break it up, and then they might put it in little smaller orders, which then can be sent out to the Walmarts of the world or the mom and pop accounts of the world. And then sometimes, as I mentioned, you might put an agent or broker in there who will try to get together a seller and a buyer in order to facilitate the process. So again, that's a great diagram of how marketing channels can work when it comes to consumer goods. Now, many times a company can reach consumers in multiple ways. For example, you can buy from Walmart by walking down the street and you're walking into a Walmart store or Sam's store and buy a product. Also, and maybe during the Christmas season on Cyber Monday, you might actually go online and buy product. So there's different ways you actually can get product from Walmart. So you have the internet, you also have the physical stores. The example they give here is Nordstrom's. Not only can I go to a Nordstrom store to buy a product or go through the internet to buy a product from Nordstrom, also they have catalogs that come directly to my house that I can order out of also. So when a company has different ways to get the product to you, that's called dual distribution. Another key channel decision is the intensity of the distribution process. And there's three types here. One is called the intensive distribution, distribution of a product through all available channels. A great example of this would be your typical purchase from a Kroger or from a Target. Okay, there are many different locations you actually can purchase products because there are Walmarts and Targets and Krogers all over the place. So if you're getting a packaged good or consumer good, that would be an example of an intensive distribution. So if I'm buying, again, Tide or candy bar, intensive distribution. Then you have selective distribution, the distribution of a product through a limited number of channels. So again, I can buy it more than one place in a given area, but not too many places. So if you want to go out and buy, let's say, a Rolex watch, now you can't get it everywhere. You can't get a Rolex watch at a Walmart. You can't get it at a Target, but there might be a few select locations around Dayton where you can get a Rolex watch. Exclusive distribution, distribution of a product through a single wholesaler or retailer in a specific geographic region. I can't run down the street or even go any place in Cincinnati or Dayton for that matter and buy a Rolls Royce. So it'll have limited locations in a given area. So I think the closest one to us here in the Midwest, I believe, is actually Indianapolis. So I can get it, but it has very limited locations within a specific geographic area. Now, because there are multiple folks involved in the channel process, conflict is going to arise at times. And there are two different kinds of conflicts that can arise. One is called horizontal conflict, where you have disagreement among channel members at the same level. So let's say you might have disagreement between Kroger and Walmart and Target. They might have a disagreement over something. So that's horizontal, so kind of going across at the same level. You also can have vertical conflict, which occurs among members at different levels of the channel. So let's say, for example, if I have a disagreement and I'm with Ford Motor Company and I have a disagreement with the dealer, that's a vertical conflict. Or if P&G has a disagreement over an invoicing issue with Walmart, that would be an example also of vertical conflict. Now, continue talking about the idea of vertical marketing systems. Vertical marketing system is designed to improve the efficiency and cost effectiveness of the distribution system. Because what it does is it will integrate different functions throughout the distribution channel. One way of doing that is called forward integration, where a firm attempts to control downstream distribution. So, for example, you can buy extra price candy in most stores. Okay. Also, right down the street from where I live here in northern Cincinnati, there actually is a standalone extra price store. So that's an example of them having forward integration, where they're trying to control from the time they produce the candy to the time it goes through to the hands of the consumer, controlling all that. So that's an example of a manufacturer doing forward integration. You also can have backward integration, where a manufacturer attempts to gain greater control over inputs to the production process. So let's say, for example, Ford. Different components go into making a car. You have steel, you have rubber, and you also have glass. So if Ford was adopting a backward integration strategy, they might go out and purchase a glass plant or a glass manufacturer, because obviously windshields and mirrors are a key part of the manufacturing of a car. So that will be an example of backward integration. Now, there are benefits to a vertical marketing system. One is obviously improves control over the overall distribution process for the manufacturer. Also, if I do it right, it can lead to some benefits in terms of lower cost. And by doing that, it can expand my profitability in terms of new businesses that I'm now involved in. Now, there are some disadvantages, obviously. There will be increased costs, because now I have a plant of where I'm making this glass, and so you have those costs associated with the people who work there, and the salaries and the benefits and all those things. Okay, and also potentially, I as a marketer lose some flexibility, because now I have one place I'm going to get glass. It's that glass plant. So I don't have multiple choices like I would now if I don't own a glass plant. So if I buy one, hey, I'm stuck with that particular company, or in essence, that is going to be my only partner when it comes to the glass business. Marketers have developed three different categories of vertical marketing systems. You have corporate systems, you have administered systems, and you have contractual systems. Okay, a corporate system definition would be a single owner operates the entire marketing channel. Okay, so in this case, if at one point in time, in certain situations, Ford manufactures a car, and they actually had in certain markets, they were testing out the idea of actually running a dealership. So we had control of the whole system from the time we manufactured the car until the time we actually sold it. That would be an example of a corporate marketing system. A administered marketing system where it achieves channel coordination when a dominant channel member exercises its power, even though Goodyear Tires is sold to many different retailers, because they're a big player, they can exercise their power or what's going on in the particular channel. You have contractual marketing systems, okay, and that's where a wholesaler sponsors voluntary chain is a great example of that. IGA food stores. So a wholesaler of product has an agreement with some retailers, and we'll say this: hey, you use our name or use a common name, and then you purchase goods from us, and then we'll keep our costs down, even though I don't own you, but with a formal agreement between you and I. Something very similar to that is a retail cooperative. Well, retailers come together, and they then share in the wholesaling operations of product, having an agreement to sell or buy from a particular wholesaler. A great example of this is that would be Ace Hardware. You ever go to Ace Hardware store, which is a little smaller than some of the big box, but they have a retail cooperative contractual system. And then there is the more well-known one, which is the franchise, where a wholesaler or retailer agrees to meet the operating requirements of manufacturer or other franchisor. So if you choose to buy into a McDonald's franchise, what you're saying is that I'm only going to buy product and things from you, and what I get in exchange is I get a well-known brand, I get some advertising that will help my business, and also you'll explain to me and tell me step by step how to run an effective business. So that's a franchise, which also is an example of a contractual system. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about logistics and supply chain management. And there are, in order to have an effective logistical process, you need to have proper supply chain management, which we'll talk about here in a minute. You need control of the activities of purchasing and processing delivery, and also delivery through which raw materials are transformed into products and made available to final consumers, which we talked about earlier. So let's go a little more detail on some of these things. So supply chain management. The way of thinking about this is from the time that you decide where you're going to source that product until the time you distribute it to the consumer, and everything in between, that would be supply chain management. So again, they mentioned here, begins with raw material inputs, ends with the movement of the final product to the consumer or customer. So in essence, it's going upstream for the manufacturer, and also meaning going back to sourcing the raw material, and also going downstream to selling the product or distributing the product to the final customer. And here is a diagram, figure 14.2, which details the supply chain of a particular manufacturing company. So again, it starts with raw materials that are going to go inbound into a particular company. That company might warehouse them or store them. Then when they're needed, they then will go into the production process. Then when they're finished, it'll go into a finished product storage area. Then it'll be shipped out of the plant of the company, and then marketing and sales folks get involved and sell this product out to customers. And the last part that is part of the supply chain management is customer service, where I'm making sure that I'm doing a great job in meeting the needs of the final customer. A new tool that many companies are using to help manage logistics is radio frequency identification, RFID. And this is where technology that uses a small chip with some type of ID information on it that can be read by a scanner using radio waves from a distance. So think about this. If I can't get this to a point where it's cost effective, and I can put this like a barcode is on most products, if I can put this on individual products, and then I as a company potentially, if you as a consumer come to the store, you buy, you take it home, I might then be able to tell when you actually have consumed that whole product and when it goes on to landfill. Think about that. Think about the way that a company can use that information to do a better job of, from a supply standpoint, of meeting the needs of the consumer. That's good news. Now, the bad news or the challenge of this is that it kind of like Big Brother's watching. What do you think? Now, a key part of logistics is the idea of being able to control your costs. And they give some good reasons why this is important. Distribution functions account for half of the firm's total marketing costs. So it's imperative that I control my marketing costs. Physical distribution obviously is a key part of the whole logistics process. And the physical distribution system contains key elements that consist of customer service, transportation, inventory control, protective packaging materials handling, order processing, and warehousing. Okay, so as a company, you want to set standards in terms of how you can deliver customer service. It's very important. So first of all, up front, you want to set the goals. Okay, what's going to be acceptable in terms of performance when it comes to customer service. Now, after you define these standards or these goals, you want to design, assemble other physical distribution components to meet these standards at the lowest possible total cost, because different folks will have different standards in terms of what they're trying to meet from a customer service standpoint. Now, components of overall cost when it comes to the customer service standards that you have to consider are your transportation and how you get the product to them, warehousing and how you're going to warehouse if you're going to do that, inventory control to make sure you know where inventory is at all times. Again, it's the overall customer service and order processing, and also some other administrative costs. Transportation, which is a key part of the logistic process, accounts for about 10% of product costs, or add 10% to the product costs. So obviously this is very important that you minimize these costs in order to keep your price down for you to stay competitive. A key cost control is often careful management of relationships within shipping firms. Okay, and some of the key parts of that are the carriers that you use. Okay, so you have two different rates. You have a class rate and also commodity rate, special rate. Now, there are different types of class of carriers. You have common carriers, which provide transportation to about anyone in terms of general public. You have contract carriers, which are for hire, that really don't offer services to people in general or the public in general. And then you have private carriers, which are transporters that provide service solely for internal generated freight. Okay, so maybe between P&G locations or warehousing of locations for Walmarts. Now, there are different ways I can get product to you as a consumer. One is I can use rail, and you'll see that all the time. Many times you've probably been stopped on the way to school or the way to your job by a train. And again, this chart is a great job of comparing in terms of speed and meeting schedules and frequency and some other things in terms of how to compare the product. What we'll look at right now is going to be speed, which is the first column, and the last column, which is cost. So the rail has average speed, and the costs overall are average compared to the other ones. If you're doing something via water, obviously that's very slow. If I'm shipping something from Brazil and I'm going to ship it via the water or the sea or the ocean, that's going to be slow, but then again, my cost is going to be a little lower too. A truck, which has a fast speed in terms of being able to get the product from the plant to the retailer or between plants very fast, but then again, because we're using trucks, it's going to be a little higher cost. A pipeline, which can be used, for example, if you're shipping in oil or gas, it can be slow, but then again, the cost can be really low. And then the fastest would be air. So if I can put something on a plane, ship it from California to Ohio, gets there fast, but then again, the cost also is going to be very high. So you can kind of see there's actually a direct correlation between speed and cost. The slower that something is, the lower the price is going to be or cost, and the faster you can get it, the higher the cost is going to be. Here's some other terms that you need to be familiar with. which deals with transportation, piggyback, most widely used form of intermodal coordination, where you're combining different items, and some other terms, birdie back and also fishy back service will deal with water as well as in the air. Now, obviously, I have product that I ship out, and at times I have to store them or put them in locations for temporary time. And so a storage warehouse holds goods for moderate to long periods in an attempt to balance supply and demand for producers and purchasers. So I might hold it there for a while before I ship it out in order to manage supply and demand. I have distribution warehouses, which are assembles and redistributes goods, keeping them moving as much as possible. So again, typically when you go into a distribution warehouse, you really shouldn't stay very long before it then goes out somewhere. And here it talks about some more information about warehousing in terms of automation and also different locations that will impact costs, and also locations will affect customer service also. Now, on this particular slide, the idea I want to talk about deals with the last bullet point there, just-in-time inventory, where instead of me ordering product and having shipped sit in my warehouse, like for example, if Walmart says, hey, I need some Pampers, order some from P&G, it sits in their warehouse until they need them. There's a strategy called just-in-time where I will have the Walmart systems talk to the P&G systems, and they'll know when I'm getting low. And so when I'm getting low, they'll order a product just in time for me to get them to where I actually need them to either go to the distribution center and go directly to the store or directly to the store. And what this does for me as Walmart, it keeps my costs down. So if I keep my costs down, what can I do? I can keep my prices down because I don't have to have as much warehousing in order to store product just in case I need it. Order processing also is a very important part of the distribution process. Again, it includes 4 major activities here they mentioned here: credit check, keeping record of sales, making appropriate accounting entries, as well as locating orders, shipping them, and adjusting inventory records as necessary. And then you have the overall material handling system, which is actually, once it is in the warehouse in a plant, just your ability to kind of handle that and keep track of where product is at any point in time. So this is Chapter 14, which deals with the marketing channels and supply chain management for Chapter 14.